Hey guys, welcome back to TaleTime. In this video, my ridiculously entitled parents insisted I must give my lazy sister my entire inheritance because I supposedly don't deserve it. And yes, in case you're wondering, I am Ripe and I'm doing this video for my fiance's new channel. Growing up, my home life was an absolute nightmare. My parents were these ultra-religious nuts who seemed to get off on controlling every single aspect of my life. Any tiny infraction was met with brutal physical punishment for my own good and non-stop psychological manipulation. From the earliest age I can remember, my parents drilled it into my head that I was a worthless, wicked sinner destined for hellfire if I did not perfectly obey their every command. Things only got worse once my little sister Emma came along a few years later. That is when the blatant favoritism started kicking into high gear. To them, Emma was this flawless little angel who could do no wrong. Drop a plate? Emma would get a gentle, "Be careful next time, sweetie." Me? I would get whipped with a belt until my back was covered in wounds. "Maybe that will teach you to stop being such a clumsy, stupid girl," my dad would snarl while my mom watched stone-faced. That was par for the course in the household. School was my only escape from the nightmare at home. But even that brief respite was stripped away once I got older. My folks started ranting constantly about the evil influences of modern education and pulled me out during middle school to be homeschooled instead. Unlike most of the other kids though, I did not have a nurturing parent supervising my lessons. Nope, from ages 12 to 15, I was basically left to teach myself using these dogmatic, cult-like religious textbooks while Emma got to attend private school. Remember, I was just a kid at this point, but that didn't stop my folks from heaping rage-fueled rants on me day after day. "School only wants to turn you into an atheist SLUT. Is that what you want?" they would scream. My dad took particular relish in calling me an WHORE and accusing me of being unchaste, even though I'd never so much as held hands with a boy at that point. His eyes would burn with fury and I always felt sick to my stomach, afraid of what new torture was coming my way. It got to where they kept me under strict home confinement, not allowing me to leave the house or have any friends over, until I learned to obey their virtuous teachings. At night I would cry myself to sleep, dreaming of a life where I could just be free and happy. So by the time I hit 15, I was completely and utterly broken down, my spirit was crushed and I was constantly racked with panic attacks at the mere sound of my dad's booming voice. I knew if I stayed in that nightmare any longer, I would lose my mind or even worse. So one day, when they hauled me into the basement for another round of discipline, I waited until they left and slipped out a window, grabbing whatever clothes and money I could frantically shove into a backpack. I hopped on a bus and just left. The relief of finally getting out of my personal hell was overwhelming, but little did I know that a fresh hell in the form of a foster care system was waiting for me. That first group home I was placed in was horrific. The counselors were these burnt-out, uncaring sadists who routinely beat and abused all the kids under the guise of keeping order. Food was scarce and the living conditions were filthy, and kids were routinely preyed upon by traffickers and pimps looking for fresh victims. Luckily, after a few months, a kind-hearted woman named Linda took me in as a foster child. She was an older lady, maybe in her 60s, and though her house was modest, it was an actual home filled with warmth and kindness. Two things I'd never experienced before. Linda helped me catch up on my studies and started putting the pieces of my life back together, but I was still just a shell of a person, completely traumatized from the abuse I endured. After turning 18 and officially aging out of the foster system, Linda continued letting me stay with her. "You are like the daughter I never had," she would say. Over time, I slowly began regaining my confidence and sense of self-worth. Linda encouraged me to start looking into colleges, secure in the knowledge that she was not gonna kick me out. However, that is when things took a turn. Just after my 20th birthday, Linda passed away from cancer. As if that heartbreaking loss was not enough, I then got slapped with a mind-blowing revelation. She had left me her entire life savings and house in her will. Nearly $1 million and a fully paid off house on a nice quiet street. Looking back, that amazing gift truly gave me a new lease on life and the fresh start I so desperately needed. I was finally able to get away from the group homes altogether and start building my own stable, independent life. Using Linda's money and home as a foundation, I enrolled in community college courses and started making plans to transfer to a 4-year university. But even that personal victory couldn't go unsullied by my toxic family rearing their ugly heads once again. A couple months after Linda's passing, I get this raging voicemail from my estranged mother saying that she and my deadbeat dad had gotten word of my inheritance and that I should prepare for a visit. A few days later, there was banging on my door. My parents had tracked me down along with my sister Emma and her doofus husband Nick. As soon as I opened it, chaos ensued. My parents instantly started berating me, calling me ungrateful and wicked for abandoning them. Emma sneered that the house and money should be rightfully hers since she was truly part of the family and I was not. Nick even suggested I give him the dough so he could invest it properly and stop me from wasting it, claiming once again that I don't have a family and I don't deserve any of my wealth. I could not believe the audacity of these people forcing their way into my home, so I frantically tried to push them out, but my dad managed to wedge his foot in the doorway and brute force his way inside. He grabbed me and slammed me against a wall, getting right up in my face. "You listen here, girl," he growled with those hate-filled eyes I knew so well. "That money is from God, not some godless old woman. It belongs to your family, not some selfish little idiot like you who would only waste it on sin." Emma and Nick started ransacking the place, ripping open drawers and cabinets as if they owned the entire joint and could take whatever they wanted. I shoved my dad off me and yelled at them to get out, but my mom advanced and slapped me hard across the face. "How dare you take that tone with your parents, you ungrateful POS," she spat. "We are taking what's ours, one way or another." And that is when Emma plucked up the framed photo of me and Linda smiling together. She tossed it dismissively to the floor, shattering the glass. "Not like this is even a real family photo anyway," she sneered. "You've never had a real family." I completely snapped at that point, seeing my own one-prized memento from the woman who saved my life get destroyed by these vile, hateful people finally lit a fire under me. I started seeing red and let out a scream, grabbing a heavy ceramic vase from the side table and smashing it across Nick's bearded face. Emma shrieked as Nick collapsed in a heap, blood pouring out of his broken nose. In that moment, my abusive dad must have realized that his little girl was not so helpless anymore, and his face drained of color as I picked up the sturdy wooden leg of the smashed table and gripped it like a baseball bat. "Get out of my house right now," I roared, tears of rage and pain streaming down my face. "You had your chance to be my family and you failed. I don't have a family thanks to you evil people." My parents frantically pulled Emma back and scrambled out the door without a second look. Nick eventually pulled himself up and blubbered, "This is not over." But he couldn't get out of there fast enough. And you are damn right it was not over, at least not for me, because that was the last time I ever let those vicious, abusive people cross my path again. I quickly got a security system installed and took out a restraining order against the whole brood. Basically, when Emma and my mom tried to bombard me with calls, texts and emails demanding my inheritance, I filed for the aforementioned no-contact order against them. I wasn't taking any more chances with their toxic behavior infecting my new life. A couple months went by and inevitably the legal threats started rolling in. I got letters from some ambulance-chasing low-life lawyer my family had hired claiming I had no right to Linda's money and demanding that I hand over the money or face getting sued by them. Well, two could play that game. I marched myself over to a respected law firm downtown and hired a couple of Barracuda attorneys who took one look at the situation and assured me that I had ironclad grounds to keep every penny, especially given the documentation of my family's persistent harassment and attacks. Not only that, but based on the evidence, my lawyers told me I could likely go after my family for damages. Vandalism of my home, breaking and entering, assault and battery in the case of my dad getting physical. I potentially had a huge case against these lowlifes. Knowing that I had the upper hand, my legal team sent a blistering cease and desist letter pushing my family on notice. However, that did not stop those delusional maniacs from filing an actual lawsuit like they were warned against. My parents and Emma claimed the inheritance rightfully belonged to them as the remaining blood family, And that as a worthless, childless, husbandless woman, aka me, I had no need for that kind of money. The gal of those people seriously knew no boundaries. We went through months of frivolous legal back and forth, motion getting denied left and right as my family's case became more and more laughable. The prospect of having to pay my legal fees was looming over them like an anvil, and finally, when the court set an actual trial date, my dad must have taken a look at the mountain of evidence stacked against him and realized that there was no way that he could win. On top of that, I made sure to countersue the entire family for damages related to their campaign of harassment, abuse, and property destruction. With everything tallied up, my family was looking at potential bankruptcy if they didn't back down. Maybe that is why my dad finally did the smart thing and agreed to sit down for mediation. We arranged to meet a few days before the trial in the moderator's office downtown with our respective legal teams. As soon as I walked into that room and saw my worm of a father already sweating, I could taste the fear and desperation radiating off him. After putting me through a lifetime of torment and abuse, the tables had finally turned. The mediator laid out the baseline facts that I was the sole inheritor of Linda's estate per her legal will and testament, including the money. There was no disputing that. He then asked if my family wished to pursue the case, making clear they would be on the hook for my legal fees if they continued on this ridiculous crusade. There was tense silence in the room as my family drank in the reality of their situation. Emma and my mom were giving my dad these nervous side eyes, silently begging him not to bankrupt them. And then finally, Nick spoke up in this hilariously grave voice, trying and failing to sound tough. "Listen, we are willing to drop this whole thing right here, right now, but we want assurances that there won't be any further legal action from your side." I, of course, could not resist stealing a glance over to my mom, who was biting her nails because of her anxiety. My dad was beet red and refusing to make eye contact with anyone. These were the same people who had tormented and beaten me to a pulp as a child. Now they were groveling at my feet, begging for mercy. The sheer power reversal was almost too delicious. "Well," Nick said impatiently, "what's it gonna be?" I stood up from my chair and leaned across the table, glaring directly at my pathetic father. "Tell me I deserve that money. Say it. Say your daughter deserves every penny after what you put me through." For a second, I didn't think the sad old bastard would actually go through with it. His face turned even redder as his mouth twitched in anger. But then Emma tugged on his sleeve and gave him a pleading look, and I could see reality smacking him in the face. This was his only way out. I let those delicious words hang in the air for a prolonged moment, savoring the utter humiliation washing over my abusive father's face. This broken down old bigot had no choice but to admit that I had bested him fair and square. After decades of torment, I had triumphed over my toxic family, all thanks to the kindness of a woman who showed me what true parental love looked like. Linda's money was more than just finances. It represented my freedom, my closure, my ability to build a good life for myself after being dealt such an awful hand as a child. There was no way I was letting these hateful people jeopardize that, not after everything I'd been through and overcome. I locked eyes with each miserable face around the table: my deadbeat dad, my cowardly mom, my conniving sister, that idiot brother-in-law. They were nothing, they were powerless, and of course absolutely broke. No further legal action, I stated firmly to them. But there are two conditions. I never want to see or hear from any of you ever again, and you will have to pay for the legal fees I've come up with so far. You are then stomped out of my life for good. Am I clear? They all avoided looking at me, but nodded sheepishly in agreement. With those poisonous chains finally severed forever, I gathered up my things and made for the exit. Since they were flat out broke, they could not pay my legal fees, and in return had to sell the pathetic house that they owned. What happened was that I bought the house, and in the weeks that followed, I liquidated my birth parents' home and any other assets in their name, transferring the profits directly to my own accounts. It was a nice little financial boost on top of Linda's fortune. I eventually sold that house too and used the combined money to buy a beautiful condo downtown. I was finally free of that nightmarish family burden. I was now finally able to focus on my education and career ambitions with pure determination. I knocked out my degrees, got an amazing job at a top company, and built up an incredible support network of real friends who became my chosen family. And well, these days I live a life that toxic family of mine could never even comprehend, a life of peace and happiness. No more terror, no more pain, no more abuse from hateful hypocrites. However, every once in a while I will get some pathetic attempt from my sister to worm her way back into my orbit for a handout. Maybe she lost her job again or her idiot husband gambled away their savings. Honestly, I don't know and I don't care, but her emails and texts go straight to my blacklist, unread and unacknowledged. As far as I'm concerned, Emma and the rest of those miserable people no longer exist. And well, my family may have been ripped from me at an unbearably young age, leaving me to fend for myself against the cruelties of this world, but you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way. And here, ripe stars, actually, I gotta say, I am shocked and blown away by this story. I'm really happy for OP at how things turned out in the end. However, I also saw a very interesting comment in the Reddit post where a user said the following. This story definitely reminded me of my uncle's situation with his terrible narcissistic parents. They were always pitting him and his siblings against each other, playing weird manipulative mind games and favoring one kid over the others for no reason. Just very psychologically destructive behavior. And well, when their wealthy aunt passed away a few years back and left my uncle a sizable chunk of money in her will, his parents went berserk with entitlement and demanded that he share the cash with the whole family because family, and it was his duty. Yeah, my uncle had the patience of a saint and tried explaining to them rationally that it was his money to do what he wanted with it, but they would not take no for an answer. The harassment and guilt-tripping just got worse and worse until finally he had enough and went fully no contact, similar to the OP in the story. What he did was he cut them off completely, blocked every single number and social media account. Last I heard, he is still estranged from those toxic jerks and has zero regrets about it. Sometimes you just have to rip the band-aid off with family if they are never going to change. And yeah guys, I'm curious, have you ever dealt with toxic family members? And if so, what have you done to get rid of them or to deal with them? Let us know in the comments, I would love to hear about your story. And moreover, thank you so much for watching the video. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and maybe even post a comment if you want to help us beat the damn YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much in advance, and I will see you again tomorrow.